Husband interrupted me during a crucial moment in Ghosts of Tsushima, refused to tell me a missed tutorial, and now wonders why I quit. My husband has been trying to convince me to play Ghosts of Tsushima for a while, pretty much since it came out, and I finally agreed to play it. However, while playing the game tonight, he interrupted me during a standoff and I missed a game guide tip that came on screen. To be clear, I was in the middle of a standoff while he was watching me play, and as I'm fighting he asked me a question, not related to the game, and I got distracted answering him while trying not to die at the same time. I'm not great at processing multiple sources of sensory input at the same time, which is why I don't normally play games like this, since they require the player to keep track of lots of different moving pieces simultaneously. That's very stressful for me, and I typically game to reduce stress, so I just don't gravitate towards games that I find difficult to play. Well, while I was fighting the enemy and trying to answer my husband's question at the same time, I missed a tutorial tip that came on screen and wasn't able to read it before it vanished. I honestly didn't even know I missed it at first, until my husband asked me if I had seen what it said. I told him no, and asked what it was I missed, but he refused to tell me. I got a little frustrated, but it's not the first time I've gotten distracted from something right in front of my face while trying to process other sensory input, so I asked him if it was something important I needed to know to play the game, to which he said, yes. So then I explained to him that I had missed that the tip even came on screen because I was talking to him, and asked again what the guide said. He smirked and said no again with this smug, teasing expression. Are you really not gonna tell me even though I missed it because I was talking to you? Can you at least tell me what it was about so I can try to Google it? I asked. Nope. He answered. So I closed the game, put the controller down, and left to watch TV in our room. Now he's texting me that I'm overreacting by quitting and telling me to just play the game and I'll be eventually figure it out. Thing is, what little interest I had in playing the game is completely gone now. I didn't really want to play it in the first place, but I knew my husband wanted me to, and at least the gameplay was beautiful and the story sounded interesting. But again, I play games to relieve stress, so now that I've missed important information I need to play the game, and I don't even know how to find what I missed, I'm just over it. I don't think I can go back since the game auto-saves and doesn't keep a backup, and even though I'm not super far in, I still don't want to start over and redo everything from square one. Update 1. A few things I want to clarify real quick. 1. I actually think Ghosts of Tsushima is a great game. It's visually stunning and the story, as far as I know it, is fairly compelling. But I'm autistic, and from a gameplay perspective, I find the combat system overstimulating and stressful, so I never really wanted to play through it myself. My husband knows these things, and I previously indulged his love of the game by watching his playthrough whenever we were both free and he was gaming. 2. It's very unlikely I would have ever surpassed my husband in this game, even if I had played through. I play games like this on easy mode and usually only clear the story and maybe some bronze achievements. My husband typically pays on hard or legendary modes when he games, and can be a bit of a completionist about the achievements depending on how much he enjoys a game. So after my initial post, I got over our disagreement fairly quickly. I went to our room and watched TV, and he gave me my space and stayed in the living room playing other games. By the time he came to bed a few hours later, I wasn't even mad any more because I felt like I got the validation I needed here to not doubt my response, and he hadn't been hassling me anymore since that first text. We wound up getting intimate because frankly, we both had itches we needed to scratch. However, afterwards when we were lying next to each other, my husband began to mumble some nonsense things. At first, I couldn't really understand what he was saying because he wasn't speaking clearly, so I told him, "Hey, sorry, I didn't hear you. What did you say?" Again, he mumbled something nonsensical, but I couldn't hear him very well, so I nudged him on the shoulder, just in case he was talking in his sleep. "Babe, what did you say?" I missed it. He continued to speak nonsense, except now, he was speaking more clearly as if fully awake. I don't remember his exact words, but some things he said sounded like something you might imagine while drifting off, like, because of the clapping seals. While other things he said made zero sense whatsoever, for example, purple windmill popcorn today. Both my husband and I have a history of some serious medical conditions. He's generally been healthy as long as we've been together, but over a decade ago, just before we got together, he had developed a very severe medical condition that resulted in seizures and brain swelling, causing him to be hospitalized and nearly taking his life. It had a heavy impact on him psychologically, and it was one of the first deeply personal things he ever told me about himself when we initially got serious. I'm an anxious person, and knowing his medical history, I assumed the worst, so I asked him, "Honey, are you all right? You sound like you're having a stroke or something." He stopped answering, and started breathing in shallow, shaky breaths. "Babe? You're freaking me out a little bit here. I need you to talk to me. If you're messing with me, you need to stop." Still no answer. Just more shallow, shaky breaths in the dark. "This isn't funny. I'm scared. I swear to God, if you're messing with me, I need you to stop right now. I swear to God, I will call an ambulance." More shallow, shaky breaths. So I threw myself out of bed and scrambled to turn on my bedside lamp. I turned to look over at him in the light and see if he was okay, and he was laying there, smirking at me again. I was livid. "That's not funny," I snapped at him. "I was scared." I thought something bad was happening to you. That's twice now this evening you've taken a joke too fucking far. We sat there looking at each other. I'm sure my expression was pissed, but I was waiting for him to apologize, to say, sorry, you're right. That was fucked up. If he just said something like that, I could have easily moved on. Instead, he stared at me blankly, completely silent. No apology. No reassurance. Nothing. For me, whatever mood there had been, was completely ruined. I got up and went to take a shower. By the time I got back, he had already fallen asleep. As of this morning, he still hasn't apologized for either incident last night. Honestly, up until his second joke, I was fully ready to defend him in the comments and in my own mind. All in all, nothing that had happened was all that serious, and a part of me felt somewhat amused at how many people in the comments seemed to jump to the worst conclusions about our relationship. After all, most of the time, we're happy. We rarely fight or argue, and we're both typically quick to say what we mean or feel, and move on. But I'm still very upset. I spent a lot of time in our shower last night asking myself why he would think a joke like that is appropriate, and why he would continue to play it having a medical episode even after it should have been obvious how scared and concerned I was for him. And the only thing I can think of is that in some way or another, he enjoys my frustration. He thinks my fear is funny. I don't know what to do with those thoughts. He's at work right now, and I'm off today, so I'm just home alone, spiraling and overanalyzing our past to see if I missed other red flags and trying to figure out at what point he started finding joy in my discomfort. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just sad. Update 2. Truthfully, I struggle with my self-confidence and find it difficult to validate my own emotions because I grew up in a highly dysfunctional household where I had to always be the one on damage control and be a grade A people pleaser in order to survive. It's something I've been working on for years, but the simple truth is, the more significant a person is in my life, the harder I find it to advocate for myself or validate my own feelings when we disagree. My husband is the most significant person in my life, so even though the initial disagreement wasn't particularly serious, it ate at me just to stand my ground on leaving the game. As for those of you fanboying so hard over Ghosts of Tsushima that you seem to take personal offense in my disinterest in playing and subsequently decided I'm TA off of that information alone, please, go touch some grass. I never said anything negative about the game, I just don't want to play it because I have disabilities that make it less accessible and subsequently, less enjoyable for me. Also, what little interest and momentum I had built by playing it so far was ruined when my husband went out of his way to make the game even more difficult for me. It's not life or death, it's a video game, so I shouldn't have to force myself to play it if I'm not having fun. Update 3. When my husband got home from work today, he initially tried to act as if nothing happened. I let him tell me about his day and listen cordially, but didn't otherwise engage with him. I'm usually very happy to have him home, so it didn't take long for him to ask if I was still upset about last night. I had been dreading this conversation all day, even though I knew it needed to happen, so I kinda surprised myself with quickly I answered, yes. Yes, I'm still mad. At first, he didn't say anything, just smiled somewhat apologetically. This frustrated me enough to keep me going. Just to be clear, I want you to understand I'm not even mad about the game anymore. Like yeah, that was petty and annoying, and I don't know where you got off thinking you had any right to be mad at me for quitting when you went out of your way to make the game even less accessible to me, but I was only playing the game for you to begin with, so it's whatever. I was already over that by the time you came to bed, otherwise we wouldn't have been intimate regardless of how much we both wanted it. But what you did afterwards was out of line. Pretending to have a medical episode? That's not a fucking joke. I'm mad because I was genuinely worried for you. I love you so much, and I was terrified, and you thought that was funny. You made a joke out of how important you are to me, and that's hurtful. You can't joke about something like that with me. I didn't expect myself to be able to say that much, and I probably didn't get it perfectly word to word here, but I had been thinking about how I felt all day, so in a way, I already knew everything I wanted to say. We both stood there quietly for a moment, and he seemed to be considering what I was saying. We don't usually fight, so we don't usually have to have talks like this, but it needed to happen. Finally, he spoke up, okay, so I know I owe you an apology, but what else can I do to help make it right? I told him, I just want a sincere apology and a promise that going forward, you will never try to scare me like that again. Thankfully, that was all it took. He told me he was sorry and that he never should have made a joke out of having a sudden medical crisis. He agreed it wasn't funny, and promised never to pull anything like that ever again. He also said he was sorry for being a dick over the game, and would accept it if I didn't want to play anymore. I told him I really didn't. It's a lovely game, but it's just too overstimulating for me and I'd really rather we just watch a cinematic let's play together, if he really wants to share it with me and get the observer experience at the same time. So I guess that's what we'll do. In the meantime, I've been reading Why Does He Do That? From several commenters' recommendations. I plan to discuss it with my therapist during our next session regarding any feelings it brings up, and in turn, I hope to develop some healthy strategies for addressing conflicts in the future. I do agree that my husband's recent behavior is very problematic, but being that he's typically not nearly so dickish as he has been recently, I'm willing to take him at his word for now. He's by no means in the clear, but future behavior will determine how much more of myself I invest into our relationship. I've dealt with enough shit in my life. I'll be damned if I'm going to the grave miserable. So the tricky thing about Googling what I missed was that I had already passed the primary tutorial. I had reached a point where I was out in the open world, but still early in game and just beginning to get access to things like sticky bombs and water stance. I already knew about how to initiate standoffs and to hold triangle first, then transition into a second attack with square, but during the standoff where I missed the guide, I survived the encounter and completely missed the guide in any context as to what it said. That was why I asked my husband after his initial refusal if he would at least tell me the context of the tip I missed so I could Google accordingly, but he also refused to tell me that. As you can imagine, trying to search for an unknown skill in a game that has so many different fighting mechanics without any context as to what I'm looking for would have taken me a while, if I was even able to find it. And if I found it, I'm not sure how I would know since I didn't know the context of the guide I missed. It takes me a lot of focus to really get into a game like this, so even though I was enjoying what I had experienced so far, it just didn't appeal to me to drop all the momentum I had built so far to try and find a needle in a haystack, all in the effort to keep playing a game that I would have much preferred to watch a let's play of instead. As for my safety, it's as you might guess. My disability does absolutely affect my ability to function fully and safely out in the world. I have a service dog that's task trained to help me with navigating life independently, but I don't really spend much time outside of my house other than going to work or other familiar places like the grocery store and the park near my house. To give you an idea of what it's like, I struggle to have conversations in public or anywhere with significant background noise because my brain perceives all the sounds as the same volume. The car driving down the street at the other end of the parking lot is just as loud as the person right next to me, speaking into my ear. I don't really have reliable fine motor skills and my balance is negligible. 1 minute, I'm holding something in my hands nice and secure, then it falls straight through my fingers as if they're made of water. Plus, I'm terrible at judging distances and have a shifting equilibrium, so once I drop something unless I have my service dog to retrieve it, I usually have to grab for it 3 or 4 times before I'm successful in getting it, and during that process, I may very well lose my balance and fall over or into a wall. Strong smells, especially multiple strong smells together, make me nauseous, and if someone stands too close after eating, I can probably make a strong guess at what they ate. Bright and flickering lights give me migraines, and sometimes trigger mild absence seizures, but I also have terrible low light vision and struggle to navigate my own bedroom in the dark, regardless of living in the same house for nearly 10 years with the same furniture set up. Everything I do outside of the well-managed comfort of my own home takes extra effort, and if I'm not careful or I overload myself with too much work, I can easily be bedridden or hospitalized for a few days. As such, for whatever small amount of independence I can maintain, most simple, daily tasks are still difficult for me, and it's hard to imagine how I would make do without the extra assistance provided by both my service dog and my husband. I've been this way my whole life, so in some ways, I'm used to it and I've several tried and true methods for dealing with my deficits, but some things, particularly the dyspraxia, have definitely gotten worse with age. Frankly, I should probably be on disability, but since my disability is invisible, I would probably need a disability lawyer and several years of appeals to get enough disability coverage to live comfortably, and unfortunately, we don't make enough money to be able to afford to do all that. So I make do however I can, and will continue to do so as long as I can. Now on to second story. Boyfriend went to a festival, ghosted me and his job for days, finally sent a vague text, and now can't be reached. My boyfriend, 27 male, left for a festival around 12 o'clock on Friday. He told me, 24F, he loved me and that he'd see me that night since he had to work on Saturday and then he'd go back to the festival on Sunday morning. I told him to have fun, be safe and that I'd see him that night. I went to work like normal and didn't hear anything from him all day, which didn't bother me since he's at a festival, probably had bad service and didn't want to spoil his fun by being on his phone. I got home after work around 0 o'clock and still hadn't heard anything. I was hungry and decided to have some food delivered, so I figured I'd call him and ask if he wanted something for when he got home. It went straight to voicemail twice. ID'd to check his location to see if maybe he was still stuck in the parking lot and therefore would have horrible service as well, which was the case. Didn't think much more of it, ordered my food, ate, and went to bed. Decided to check his location once more and saw the bus was just pulling out of the parking area and on the road. When I woke up, he wasn't next to me. I immediately checked my phone but didn't have any missed messages or calls. This started to slightly worry me, so I looked at his location again and it showed him in a hotel somewhere. I figured he must have missed the last train home and that I'd see him soon. I went on about my day, deep cleaning the house, doing some laundry, etc., and didn't think about it anymore. Then around 1600 hours I received a call from his boss asking if I knew where he was since he didn't show up for his shift at 1500 hours and they couldn't reach him. I hadn't even noticed the time. I called, FaceTimed, texted and messaged him but got no response. Then around 1700 hours I got one lousy message that he had hurt his ankle and lost his wallet. I asked what happened, if he was okay, why he didn't come home, why he didn't let me know, he was going to a hotel, why he was ignoring his boss and I, when he was coming home and who he was with. None of our friends went to the festival, he went alone. It's now Sunday and he still hasn't responded nor come home. He turned his location settings off yesterday around the same time he sent that text to me. I have this really bad feeling like something is off. This is very out of character for him. We've been together for 6 years and he's never done anything remotely like this. I'm worried, I'm angry, and I feel like he's hiding something. I know he didn't plan on going to a hotel, he didn't bring a change of clothes or packed a bag. He just went for a day, planning to come back that night. AIO for having this bad feeling like something is very wrong? Update 1. When I posted yesterday morning I was beside myself with worry, and I had already taken quite a few steps to find him, which included calling friends and family. Many people told me I was probably overreacting and he was just having fun. But it didn't sit right with me, so when coming to Reddit I was just hoping for a few people telling me I hadn't lost my mind. When calling the hotel, they initially informed me that they couldn't give any information about guests due to the privacy law in my country. The police weren't of any help either, telling me that I should contact them again if he hadn't come home by Tuesday morning. I spoke to the management of the festival, who could confirm he scanned his ticket at the entrance on Friday. However, they work with wristbands, so there was no way for them to check if my boyfriend also came on Saturday and Sunday. With the hotel, the festival and the police being quite dismissive, I turned to Reddit. I didn't include all these details in my original post, since I didn't want the post to get too long and I figured I could just add information by responding to all of you. That worked fine until we got to 100 plus reactions, and then 1000 plus and even 5000 plus, which is absolutely crazy to me. Honestly, I can't thank you enough. Your responses really helped me through this and confirmed that the chance of something bad having happened was way bigger than him just having fun. After calling the hotel again and pleading with the manager of the hotel for quite a while, they were able to inform me that there hadn't been a reservation under his name. I sent his picture to the hotel and they looked at the security footage around the time his phone showed up there, though they couldn't inform us of the results. They did promise to keep the footage on file in case the police would need it later on. I contacted the police again with this information, and while they were still hesitant to investigate further, they did give the hotel a call to request the footage of that Friday night. A little while later they called me back saying that my boyfriend hadn't been on any of the cameras all weekend, therefore they could rule out he had even been there at all. Because his phone clearly showed his location being there and I had screenshots to prove it, the police realized that something indeed wasn't right and promised me they'd look into it straight away. Me and one of our mutual friends decided to start driving towards the festival site, which was about a 4-hour drive. We knew we wouldn't be able to get in since we didn't have tickets, and even if we did there'd be no way to find him in a crowd of over 65,000 people, but at least we'd be close by if we received any news and we could ask around to see if anyone recognized his picture. Before we reached the site, I received another call from the police. My boyfriend had been in the hospital since Saturday morning. He had been found in the ditches of the parking lot of the festival around 3 a.m. together with a few other people who had also been to the festival. All of them severely beaten up and without any of their belongings. The hospital found traces of the same drug in each of their systems, which leads the police to suspect they have been preyed upon and drugged by groups of people searching for easy targets, people who were alone. Apparently it usually takes 1 to 2 days to identify an unconscious person without any form of ID on them, which is why I didn't hear anything earlier. The police are investigating further and will let us know when they found who's responsible. We already confirmed that we want to press charges. My boyfriend is okay now, and he's expected to make a smooth recovery. He broke his collarbone and his wrist, is covered in bruises and cuts and has a light concussion. He came by very late Sunday night. Unfortunately, or luckily, he doesn't have any memories of the incident or the events that happened right before. I'm feeling so relieved and happy that we found him and he's safe, yet incredibly angry at the people who did this to him and the others that had been found. You always hear horror stories about things like this, but you never expect it can happen to you. I'm sorry I didn't update any earlier, but as you might be able to imagine, it wasn't the first thing on my mind these last 24 hours. I'll try to answer a few more questions today should any of you still have some, and then I'll leave this be. Dear Redditors, thank you again for everything from the bottom of my heart. None of this makes any sense. I'm calling bullshit. 1. Zero reason for Op not to have called hospitals beforehand. 2. No way for the muggers to know the boyfriend's passcode to text Op back. 3. The hospital would have definitely reported this mass mugging to the police, and would obviously connect the two when Op supposedly called to report the BF missing. 4. Unless the boyfriend was in a fucking coma, why wouldn't they ask the hospital to call someone for him? 5. Why do the police need to investigate who's responsible when they already have the footage and timeline from the hotel? 6. If they were all drugged up by the same substance, then why did they need to be beaten up? 7. Where is the fucking article about this happening? This is insane, unhinged, and makes no sense. Op needs to take another creative writing workshop and do better.